Hello, and welcome to the China Open Source Conference. I'm Patrick Masson, General Manager and Board Director at the Open Source Initiative. As I'm sure you already know, and judging from the excitement around COSCON, open source software is enjoying tremendous growth internationally and especially in China. When the OSI was founded in 1998, few could have believed just how successful the open source movement would become. Today, open source software is the driving force in technology. As OSI President Allison Randall has said, if you're not doing it, you're just going to be left behind. Of course, software developed by OSI affiliate members, Drupal, Mozilla, WordPress, and the Linux Foundation are now ubiquitous, and the OSI is honored to include in our membership open source communities supporting every industry. In manufacturing, the Eclipse Foundation is working with GE and Bosch to develop open source software extending the Internet of Things. In healthcare, OpenMRS is used by Save the Children and Doctors Without Borders to fight Ebola. OpenEdX, the online learning platform from Harvard and MIT, is supporting the edX project and extending education over the web to students around the world. Nowhere is the adoption of open source software more evident than in China, where we're seeing the number of contributors and original open source software projects increase every year. This growth is having an important and substantial impact on the international stage. This is why the Open Source Initiative was so very pleased to partner with the Kaianshi community. You may not know this, but Kaianshi was not only our very first affiliate in China, but within Asia as well. Considering this rapid growth of open source software in China, the Kaianshi Alliance, with a focus on governance, operations, education, and awareness, will be critical for helping the emerging open source community across Asia grow and mature. In addition, in line with the OSI's mission, Kaianshi is a leader in open source software and can help build bridges between the international open source software community and China's emerging open source software community. Indeed, we've already seen their work in action, increasing communication and activities between the OSI, the Apache Foundation, GNOME, Linux Foundation, Node.js, All-Steam Alliance, and others. Just like the open source software movement itself, this conference, the first ever COSCON, was a grassroots effort where like-minded peers came together as a community to collaborate and co-create. I and the OSI Board of Directors wish you all the best with the conference and in your continued efforts in your development of open source software. We'd also like to recognize the hard work of the COSCON organizers and the generous sponsors who made this conference possible. And of course, we thank the Kaianshi Executive Board for the honor of speaking with you today and welcoming you to the China Open Source Conference. Thank you, and now go have some fun.
Hello everyone, my name is David Lee. I'm talking to everyone from Shenzhen in China. Shenzhen is the city for producing most of the electronic products. And on the other side, Shenzhen also have a huge open innovation system. It's our pleasure to be part of this open source and circular economic days. We'd like to explain to everyone about the productions of electronics, the recycling of electronics, and also the future of open source and circular economy can play in these cities. So starting from the open source economy. Open source in software is relatively new in the past 20 years, but it's also part of the fiber of making the Shenzhen economy works. A huge part of the Shenzhen electronic productions is based on these ideas of gongban, literally translate into these ideas of a public board. Also as this gongmo and translating as the public casting. Under these models, the Shenzhen has developed indigenous open innovation systems. to let everyone who produce electronic products to be able to work with each other, to be able to based on what the society and the ecosystem has to offer. So I think in the future of the open source development, Shenzhen is going to play a very important role in terms of pushing the open source, pushing the open hardware forward. And on the other side, China is also doing a lot of the recycling of electronics. Right now, at the current level, there are a few different kind of recycling happening in China. One of them is this visual. Everybody have seen the in the village, remote village somewhere, people are retrieving the chips out of the PCB board. And when they are doing this, they are actually providing a very high value recycles, because this chip gets back to placing on a new device. The chip goes back to the new systems. By doing this, this is cutting down the cost of the electronics such as cell phone, tablets, and computers. And this has a very big implication on how fast these new innovations in the electronic device can spread across the world, to spread into the developing countries. But this is a very terrible way to recycle because it's dirty, it's environmentally, it's very intense for the environment. But on the other one is the people are now starting to circulating the PCB by melting them down, by chemically breaking them down, and retrieving the precious metal out of it. Huge amount of the current gold circulations is being produced this way. But this has the drawbacks of the very low value recycle. At the end of the day, you are melting down this highly sophisticated manufactured chips, which is rated for 20 years. After using it for 2-3 years, you melt them down and just to retrieve a very minute trace amount of the precious metal out of them. We think the open source and the open board is the futures of this. It strikes a best balance between these two. By making the board open source, the system, the board can be reused, can be repurposed on different kind of the electronics. Because of the board itself, we are reusing at the board level. We don't need the dirty process to retrieve the chips out of it, and we don't. This can be a much higher value recycle, much cleaner recycle. So I think as this electronics, as the Internet of Things, is going to rapidly grow, and making them open source, making them based on the open designs, have a lot of implications on the futures of this economies. One of the goals we have the open source and the circular economic days in Shenzhen is to kick off the conversations about the future's possibility of having more and more Internet of Things products to be based on open source design. So they can be better recycled, they can be better reused, and they can save money, energy, and environment. At the same time, we are developing the new economies and bringing the useful Internet of Things to the markets. So this is one of our goals in having this in Shenzhen, is to facilitate these conversations, is to dig deeper into how all this electronics, all this open board, all this almost open source board works in Shenzhen, and how to bring that model connecting to the international community, how to connect it to a new international developers.